The most important tip in this video is going to be name your clan boss. Ours is named Derek. Hello everyone, Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are on the free to pause account because we are going to be talking about the clan boss. Now, you guys really appreciated my How to Hydra video where I broke down strategies for Hydra in general, showed the team that I'm using on my free to play here, but also talked about what you're looking for in a Hydra team. And we're going to do the same thing here with the clan boss. Now, this is going to be talking about how to progress your clan boss team. So there's going to be a lot of content in here that is going to be talking about everything from how to get past clan boss easy to how to get to a 4-key or 3-key Ultranightmare team, even without an unkillable team. Now, there are plenty of unkillable teams out there, but you do not need an unkillable team to beat the Ultranightmare clan boss. It might take you 3 keys, it might take you 4 keys in some situations. In fact, on this account here, it is regularly either a 3-key or a 4-key for my clan boss team, but I can get the top chest on Ultranightmare, and that is the goal of any account, because once you can get that top chest, it guarantees you a shot at getting sacred shards as well as legendary tomes. And that is one of the most important things for progression in your account. Ideally, eventually you get to a point where you can top chest Ultranightmare and Nightmare at the same time. Now, I'm not quite there yet because quite often I cannot 1-key Nightmare depending on what infinity it rolls, but these are some of the tips that you're going to be looking for how to get the most damage out of your clan boss team and how to push your clan boss team to new heights, especially if you don't have an unkillable team. So first of all, the biggest tip for increasing your damage in clan boss is masteries. Now, there is one mastery that will make a bigger difference than any other mastery in the game, and that is War Master. War Master, and to be fair, Giant Slayer on champions that do triple hits or lots of multiple hits, ideally triple hits or more on average. Giant Slayer and War Master are going to be great for you. And why? Because that is a chunk of damage that you just do to the boss every time that triggers. So basically with War Master, you have a 60% chance every time you attack the boss and do damage of doing an extra, I want to say it's around 75,000 damage per hit. So it's a 60% chance of doing 75,000 damage. You're ideally going to be attacking, at least every champion should attack at least once every turn. And if you're making it to turn 30, that is going to be, at least 150 hits, if not 300 hits if you're going 2-to-1 for the boss. And that means you are going to be doing a bunch of extra damage. War Master will add millions of damage per War Master to your team. It's huge, and I don't think players who are struggling with clan boss understand how important War Master and or the other one here, Giant Slayer, is. Now, the difference with the two of them is Giant Slayer can proc on every single hit. So Giant Slayer is good for champions that have like a triple hitter on the A1, such as an Alice, for example, or a Rosin who will have a triple hitters, or champions that do multiple 3-hitters in general. That said, you want to be averaging more than 2 attacks. You want to be averaging about 2.2 to 2.5 to get the most out of Giant Slayer. Otherwise, I think War Master is a little bit better. And definitely, if you're only doing 2 attacks, War Master is definitely better. There's technically more damage potential out of the Giant Slayer because against the clan boss, Giant Slayer and the War Master procs are going to do the same amount of damage. But you will also find in other content, War Master will prove to be better overall. And if you're generally not getting that triple hitter most of the time, then maybe Giant Slayer might be a little bit better than, or not Giant Slayer, but maybe War Master might be a little bit better than Giant Slayer in those situations. Outside of that, other tips that can be useful is if you have debuffers, getting Master Hexer, where these debuffs stay on a bit longer, can be very, very clutch. If you are not running a tuned team, then things that give you additional turn meter can be very, very helpful as well. So things like Arcane Celerity or Rapid Response can be very helpful to give critical champions extra turn meter when things fall off like buffs or debuffs. Cycle of Magic, if you're not doing a tuned skilled team, or if it's somebody that doesn't care about the tune as far as the skill timings are concerned, this is a good way to occasionally get an important skill back up just a little bit faster. You do need to be careful with this one though, because again, if you're using a tuned team, this can actually prevent a skill from firing off at the correct time, which can cause a problem with the tuned team. Now, why might you want to tune a team or not tune a team? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and we'll talk about tuning teams as well. Other things, of course, other than that, is just get some extra crit damage and crit rate on your champions. I like Life Drinker to keep people alive. It's a good way to just give them a little extra healing, because you never know, with that extra little bit of healing, they might outlast one last hit. And sometimes staying alive versus one hit versus dying for that one hit can be the difference between getting 1, 2, 3 more turns and actually just dying and ending the run. So a couple different masteries that can add a bunch to you, but War Master or Giant Slayer, really, really key for pushing up your damage, particularly early on. Next up here, we're going to talk about 2 debuffs that are very, very critical as well to doing keeping you alive for the most part and helping for some damage. Decreased defense and weaken, which is one of the other ones. I don't have it here on this particular champion, but both of those can add a ton of damage. Up until you get to Nightmare, weaken will probably actually add more damage than decreased defense, because the boss doesn't have a ton of defense, and weaken just is a flat 25% increased damage. But once you get to Nightmare and Ultranightmare, decreased defense will give you more bang for your buck as far as doing damage against the boss. But why not get both? Why not get decreased defense and weaken? You will actually find that decreased defense and weaken will actually help with your War Master procs. They can add damage to the poisons or the burns in some cases as well, if you have those up there as well. Not the decreased defense, but weaken can actually add damage to poisons and burns, so that can happen as well. And meanwhile, decreased attack, well, one of the biggest challenges for a non-unkillable team is staying alive. And a decreased attack, 50% less attack, is 50% less damage by the boss. So keeping up decreased attack is huge. So having it on 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown ability, well, if this champion is fast enough to generally keep it up 100% of the time, then that's great. So if this champion is at least going 4 times for every time the boss goes 3, you're probably going to have decreased defense up most of the time, or decreased attack up most of the time as well, I should say. So that's helpful. Other champions and other ways you can certainly do this as well is have this on the A1. So for example, a Rector Drath has decreased attack on the A1. So does something like a Taragi the Frog. And those can be good because even if they're not 100%, it's a 2-turn lasting buff, and you'll have enough A1 attacks to generally get it to trigger most of the time. Underrated defensive buffs include things like Strengthen, Shield, and Increased Defense. Now, Strengthen is a flat 25% damage reduction. That's huge. Shields are a way to give you basically some ablative HP, so the shields can constantly be put back on, so they will keep everyone alive just a little bit longer, give you a little more margin for taking HP damage, and especially if you don't have the best healing, you don't need to heal because the shields will get repaired regularly. So shields are a good way to go for ablative damage as well. So Mithrala is actually not a bad clan boss champion for a while as either. On some accounts, she could be very, very good for you. She also brings things like poison, which we'll talk about a bit. That is part of why I use my Tagors, for example, as well. He brings the shield. He can bring an increased defense. Things like that, ways to mitigate damage, are absolutely huge. As far as other buffs, as I mentioned, increased defense is a great way to get your own defense up. That mitigates damage as well. You want to get if you're going to have increased defense on your team, you're going to want to try to aim your defense to around 2,400 to 2,800, because that'll get you to where I think the cutoff for defense, as far as where it kind of tapers off and being useful, is above 4,200. And increased defense gives you an extra 60% increased defense. So when you have about a 2,400 to 2,600 defense, that increased defense gets you to that 4,200 mark, which is great. On the other hand, increased attack, well, assuming you have attack-based damage dealers, you're doing extra damage, which is kind of the point in Hydra. So increased attack can be a very useful buff as well. That said, one of the biggest damage mitigation buffs that is very hard to understand why, because it's not documented well, is ally protection. And here is the way the clan boss works. Basically, the clan boss has a multiplier on how much damage he does. This multiplier is based on how many turns happen in the game. So it's not just a flat out, the number of turns times the damage, but it does ramp up. So basically every turn that the clan boss takes a turn, he slowly but surely begins to do more and more and more damage. You'll notice that even on the level of Nightmare and Ultranightmare, his first couple of hits are pretty weak. And this is where ally protection comes in. A 50% ally protection means that the ally that is getting smacked is only taking 50% of that damage, and then the other champion who has brought the ally protection takes the other half of that. Now, that would sound like a recipe to get that other champion killed because he's going to be taking the damage of half of 4 other champions. But this is where the clan boss mechanics work against it, because that multiplier for turns does not increase the damage that gets passed on through ally protection. So what'll happen is, say your champion gets smacked for 10,000 damage, because the multiplier is a times 5. Well, you're only going to take 5,000 of that 10,000 damage, and then Tyrant will take, well, he'll take 1,000 damage instead, because he will only take the 1/5 of the multiplier, and then he's only taking half of it as well. That suddenly becomes a lot more manageable, so those other 4 hits actually end up being less than what he would have taken by taking a full 1 hit. Now, he still needs to be able to tank the damage, and the way defense works, it will reduce the amount of damage he takes as well, so defense and other damage mitigation can certainly help as well. But ally protection helps a ton in decreasing the amount of damage that your team takes. So one of the things I actually like to do for struggling to get up to my first Ultranightmare team is, if I can get at least one ally protection champion, that champion, as long as I can keep them alive, should be able to protect everybody else on the team. One of the fun ways I can make sure that that champion stays alive is have a second ally protection champion and basically run 2 of them, and they protect each other, and ally protection is always up. This works better in an untuned team where I don't have to worry about whether or not ally protection is up. There's an untuned team means that 95% of the time I'm going to have ally protection up on my champions, and it's going to split between these 2 guys, which also means they're going to split who's taking what damage. And there's a chance that they're not going to take the direct damage from an attack because they'll have ally protection from the other champion up as well, possibly. So it's a great way to deal with damage mitigation. Another thing that is great is looking for ways to mitigate damage in other ways as well. Tyrant is a great clan boss champion because of this passive. Decrease the damage inflicted by enemies under HP burn by 10%. That's just period against all champions. So as long as I can keep a burn up on the boss, I'm taking 10% less damage, period. Venomage has a passive where she'll do 15% damage reduction if the enemy has block healing or reduced healing on them, and that's 15% less damage. Geomancer, one of the reasons Geomancer is the GOAT of content like this is, in addition to reflecting the damage from the HP burn, but it decreases the damage you receive by 15% before it reflects that damage back. So not only does he do a ton of damage through this reflect that processes what effectively is a Giant Slayer type attack on all the damage that gets reflected. That's why it does so much damage. This here gives you some additional tank and survivability as well. So looking for things like this and passives like this on other champions is a great way to keep absolutely everybody alive. So Bront, we've been talking about keeping absolutely everyone alive, and that's great. But what about doing actual damage? Well, there's all kinds of fun ways to do actual damage. First of all, things like poison and things like HP burn are great against the boss because they do passive damage overall every time the boss takes a turn. And it's not that hard to stack up a couple of poisons and possibly an HP burn. And then every time the boss takes a turn, they're taking, 75,000 from the burn and 20,000 from the poison. That's a huge amount of damage, especially if they're taking 5 poisons. Well, that's 100,000 a turn when they take their own turn. Plus, there are a lot of champions that can use those passively to do other stuff as well, including things like igniting burns or igniting poisons as well, other ways to stack up additional damage. That, for example, is one of the reasons that Taragi the Frog is such a great champion. Taragi brings you, not the provoke, Taragi brings you the ally protection here. He brings a shield on all the champions as well, giving them some ability to tank a little bit of damage. He puts the reflect damage up, which, doesn't do a lot, but it reflects some damage, so it's at least something. And he heals based on poisons on the enemy team, which is a chunky heal, but then he passively puts these poisons out every time he gets hit. And since it's a per hit, when the boss is doing their affinity 3 or 4 hitter attack, he gets a chance to put the poison up every single hit. So on average, for every AoE, he gets 2 poisons back up against the boss. So Taragi puts up a ton of poisons against the boss Absolutely huge. A great way to add extra damage to your run while giving yourself some good provoking as well, while giving yourself some good ally protection as well. Blessings like Brimstone are another way to add a ton of damage. If you have a legendary in your clan boss team, you want Brimstone on that legendary. It's actually very important because that can add a ton of damage. Even a first level Brimstone means you'll land it often enough. For example, in my clan boss team here, I've got Tyrant with Brimstone. He lands it often enough that I get, 2, 3, 4 million damage out of it. Brimstone procs do 250,000 damage each. And the clan boss will proc that Brimstone damage on the A2 and the A3, which are the 2 AoE hits. So that is a ton of extra damage. Again, we've talked about Geomancer being amazing. He's got the reflect damage. He is really good against the affinity bosses because it is a per hit reflect damage with that Giant Slayer proc. So he is very good at doing a lot of damage against the affinity boss. So sometimes you want to pay attention to what affinity the boss is and wait until you get affinity if you've got a Geomancer. If you're running him against the Void, you're actually losing out on an awful lot of damage because you're missing out on 3 times 5, 15 chances to proc Giant Slayer, which is actually pretty huge. So, affinity, pay attention to the affinity if you're using something like a Geomancer. But Geomancer is not the only reflect damage champion that does something like that as well. You could certainly use a Brogni, for example, who has the shield to reflect damage, which can be very good as well. So things like that ways to do passive damage can be absolutely amazing. One of the things that can actually be very, very helpful in Clan Boss is counterattacking. So if you have a counterattack champion, so a champion like a Valkyrie or a Skull Crusher or a Martyr, for example, they can be great for the clan boss because you can get those counterattacks up, which will add a ton of extra damage because you're basically getting an extra free A1 proc every one time the boss attacks. That's also where things like these counterattack rings and amulets and stuff like that for the revenge stuff that you can buy from the clan shop, those can be very good on your clan boss team, as can retaliation gear that can give you the counterattack as well. Another one to think of is ally attack. So we go here to Morag. Morag can actually add a ton of damage by using the ally attack. So Morag's ally attack brings a bunch of random extra champions in to do their A1. And if you have your damage dealer happen to be among them, then you're going to get a huge smacking A1. And honestly, if you aren't getting that huge smacking A1 because they grab other champions, well, maybe my Taragi went instead, and my Taragi got a decrease attack up that wasn't there beforehand. So having powerful A1s and using ally attacks can be a great way to add damage as well as keep some of those debuffs up as well. Finally, one of the more underrated ways to keep your champions alive and healed is Leech. So don't forget about Leech. Champions like Deacon can throw Leech up on their A1. Ugo can throw it up on her A1 occasionally. It's certainly not necessarily 100% consistent, but Leech, along with Life Drinker, can be a great way to keep your team topped up as you're doing damage directly to the boss. And even if you aren't doing a ton of damage because they're not huge damage dealers. Remember that War Master proc that I was talking about earlier, how War Master is super important? That will actually heal you through Leech as well. So champions that don't do a ton of damage naturally, but have War Master, have a chance for a big heal against the clan boss just by processing Leech. And finally, there are 2 blessings we're going to talk about here. Cruelty is actually great to have on a champion in Clan Boss because that will permanently decrease the defense of the Clan Boss, allowing you to do more damage over time. And I generally think that the best way to handle it would be to have whichever epic has the highest blessing and is attacking most of the time should get the highest blessing for Cruelty. And everyone else that is an epic or a rare can get Phantom Touch. Phantom Touch is going to give you basically extra damage on a random chance to inflict that bonus damage. But it's a 15% chance for free damage on a champion. Even if their attack is not great, it's free damage. And it's really hard to complain about free damage. So Phantom Touch and Cruelty, great ways to add damage to your clan boss team. So here is my clan boss team. And here's ultimately the thing when you build a clan boss team. You are going to want to be aware of what your champions are doing, and you don't want to override what these champions are doing. So you're going to want to primarily put your best aura in the front. Now I have 3 different champions that have a 25% HP aura, so I just chose Tyrant because I could. I could have put Tagore up front, but I wanted Tagore to be second because technically the clan boss will tend to target the champion in the front more often than they will target anybody else when it comes down to the stun. And Tyrant, I didn't mind getting stunned as much as anybody else, versus Tagore, I didn't want him to get stunned or killed with the stun because he's got the revive, which can sometimes bring back the clan boss team. Plus he brings the healing and the increased speed, which I thought were pretty critical as well. Plus, in this particular team, my Tyrant is in Relentless, which means occasionally my Tyrant will get extra turns. Now, this is not 100% ideal because it means sometimes he can outrun buffs that would keep him alive normally. But in general, because he puts decreased defense on himself and he heals himself a ton with his A1, because his A1 brings him self-healing, he generally keeps himself alive even when he's outrunning the buffs. Also, I've turned off his burn because I don't want his burn to overwrite Geomancer's burn. If I was using him in a team without a Geomancer, I would absolutely have this as the number 2 and have the ally protection as the number 1, because getting that burn out is extra damage, but also it then triggers this decreased damage inflicted by 10%, which is huge, and he heals more off of champions that are burning versus damage he deals to somebody normally. So you prioritize what makes sense for the champions here. So I'm going to prioritize this as the number 1. I've got Taragi here, and you'll notice I have his Bog Blessing ally protection prioritized, but because I have Tyrant doing the ally protection early, I have Taragi skipping it on the first turn and going for the decrease attack because I might as well try to get it out there. Plus it spaces out this. I also don't have him doing this AoE provoke because even if this does more damage than his A1, I want him to try twice to get this decrease attack out, which he's only got a 40% chance of doing, but he'll do it every 2 turns, and then the 3rd turn he does this. It means I've got a decent chance of getting this up, and then it would last for 2 turns, possibly 3 with Master Hexer, and that's huge. Ugo, well, Ugo is bringing the decreased defense, very important. The block buffs is actually underrated in this particular team because the enemy on an affinity boss will put increased attack up, which can add extra damage. Block buffs will prevent that from happening. So don't sleep on block buffs, although it's not necessarily the most important thing. And if it doesn't time out right, it doesn't time out right. As well as I don't have her program much because by default, she will generally do this. But if people need a cleanse or a heal, she will actually default to this heal over this. And since a heal might keep the run alive, that is more important than getting that decreased defense up. So leaving her unprogrammed basically lets her make decisions, and Ugo's AI is actually fairly smart. Tagore, on the other hand, you'll notice I have him prioritizing this as the initial start, and then he'll just do whatever makes the most sense for him. By default, he will generally lean towards this heal and increase speed than he will to this shield unless somebody is down. So from an AI perspective, that makes the most sense. So that's how I've got it built. And again, this team will do a 4-key Ultranightmare against Force, which unfortunately is what we're fighting right now. We'll do a 3-key against Magic and can actually do a 2-key against Spirit, but it is very, very close, and I've never actually pulled it off because I need 2 keys in a row to hit that 2-key threshold. But, you know, we'll run this here, and I'm going to move myself, and we'll cut in a little bit as we get to important parts during the battle. Well, as you can see here, we're doing some battle. We're getting a bunch of damage. That's all that reflect damage, as you probably saw up there. You know, we're getting occasionally weak hits, which is unfortunate. But as you'll see, occasionally some of these champions will do double hits. It'll look like they'll do double hits because they'll hit multiple times. See, that was a bunch of extra. There we go. Tagore did 35,000 extra damage because of War Master. So maybe it isn't the 70,000, whatever else. But there's another 45,000 and he weak hit. That adds up really, really quickly. And as you can see here, between the reflect damage and some of the poisons and the War Master, we're actually off to a decent start where we've done 3 million damage on turn 4 of the boss. And we're generally mostly healed up. So we'll cut back in maybe about 5-10 more turns in and see what kind of damage reduction and protection we're going to have against the boss with these ally protections. All right, we're just nearing around turn 10, and we're just going to do a damage comparison of how much damage the boss is going to do. We're going to slow this down to 1 and just watch my champions do a little bit of damage, but watch the ally protection at work. So you see Taragi's got ally protection up at the moment on absolutely everybody, and so he's going to attack, and you can see Taragi, in addition to taking the 5,000 damage, was taking like 500 or 700 as the other half of what the damage was happening right there. So rather than taking 5,000 and an additional 2,500, he already was taking less than a quarter of that damage just in what else was going on. So That is how powerful that ally protection is. And as we let this run a little longer, you'll see that eventually he'll be doing a lot more damage. He'll be chunking away at these guys' HP, but that ally protection is just going to keep everybody alive, and these 2 ally protectors are just not going to fall. All right, we're nearing another ally attack or area attack, and we're going to look again. Again, Tyrant now is the one actually taking this one. So, but we're 6 turns beyond, so we should be taking a lot more damage. And it looks like Taragi got it up as well. So yeah, so look at that. We're taking 500 or 600 damage still from the ally protections, and not the 10,000 damage or 5,000 that we were taking otherwise from some of that stuff. That is how powerful ally protection is in the clan boss. It is super strong and is one of the great ways to keep your champions alive. So I'm going to let the rest of this run out, and we'll talk a little bit more at the end of this clan boss run. So good news, just before we get to the end of this run, we are just about to hit 18 million, and 18 million is probably the number you're looking to average, if not exceed, to be a true 4-key team. Now, if you're doing 17 to 18 million, you're averaging that 17 and a half, you're really, really cutting it close. So 18 is probably a slightly better number to do, but 18 is going to average 72 million over 4 keys, and that is going to be enough to 4-key the boss. So that's what you're looking to do. So for me, if I'm at least 17 or 18 million and anything over is gravy. That said, a 3-key is getting yourself up to about 24 million. And, that's going to get you to that same number as well. So if you can do 24 million in runs pretty consistently, then you can start to 3-key, and that's absolutely amazing. You don't have to do it on every key either. As long as you're doing it on most of the keys, you should generally be good to get that top chest, because generally even with the RNG, you're going to average into a good amount of damage. And we've had our first loss, and this is where this starts to go downhill, because I'm not going to have ally protection up quite as much most of the time, because I don't have my Tyrant anymore, unless we're going to have Tagore pick Tyrant back up here, which it doesn't look like he's going to do. Oh, there it is. He picked him up. But we may not have enough time for it. Yep, there we go. So it's going to spiral downhill from here, and that's fine. But we've actually done almost 24 million, which, as I said, would be great for a 3-key, other than the fact that I know against this affinity boss, this is a really, really good run for me, as opposed to an average run on the other affinities. So here we go. This is my team. Tyrant did some okay damage, but not bad. You'll notice my weakest damage dealer is Tagore, who still did almost 2 million damage, and probably 2/3 of that is War Master. So that's really, really impressive. Geomancer certainly taking the cake for damage because of his reflect and his burns. Taragi doing a large amount of damage with his poisons as well. Very helpful. And then Ugo and Tyrant just kind of, keeping everyone alive, bringing the support, and enabling these champions to do something. This is just the team I have built because these were the champions I had. You can certainly swap out a lot of these other champions. There are plenty of really good ally protection champions. Rearguard is actually a decent one that would help with this. You could certainly use a Vergis. He's a little different to use, but he brings some interesting things to Clan Boss. I like Taragi as one of the best ally protectors in the game for Clan Boss, I believe. Tyrant is actually just really, really good as well, and I've been really impressed with Tyrant, having had a chance to play with him on this account. And yeah, I've got a Geomancer, which does make this easier, but you could certainly use other damage dealers out there. Dracomorph would fit into this just fine. Fane would be very solid in this one, other than the fact that she is a little bit squishy. But having champions that are just a little bit squishy is okay, but you want to tank them up. This is more of a looking for tanky champions. A Rosin would actually be a very decent damage dealer in this one, because he does a lot of good direct damage. He also brings decreased defense and weaken, and then his A1 could use Giant Slayer, and he it pays off pretty well for him. So that would be another option for you as well. There's a lot of different champions, and I could list tons of them, and it wouldn't cover absolutely every single one of them. But these are the type of teams that you can build, So let's talk about a few other things. So this is Deadwood Jedi's website. A wonderful, wonderful website. I'll try to leave a link to it in the description. He has all kinds of fun speed tunes for you. And while this is certainly focused on unkillable teams, you'll notice here there's some 1-to-1 ratio, 2-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1 ratio, 4-3 ratio teams here that you can build as well. And why would you want to build some of these teams? Well, for example, I'm using a double ally protection team to basically ignore the fact that I don't have to tune anything. But I could build something like this with a champion that has a 4-turn cooldown ally protection. And what I can do is I can take a look here at the Ultranightmare team. And if you look here on the bottom, you can see when some of these skills are happening. So you'll see here Skull Crusher, who's putting up ally protection, is starting his turn on turn 9 on, is always going to be the champion here on the team. And that's going to absolutely make a very consistent run. That also means eventually you can figure out ways to put things like block debuffs up on champions in specific times. So maybe you have a team where you have somebody that always takes their turn right before the A2, and then everyone is taking only a single turn before this stun. So you would put up the block debuffs, then you would not get whatever debuff would happen on that second AoE, which is decreased speed against the spirit boss, by the way, which is part of the reason that you need to worry about that for affinity tuning. And then on the third one, you can protect yourself against the stun if you can get a block debuffs up or still up at that point in time. So using a tuner like this allows you to play with champion speeds to actually develop a team to tune it. Now, that's if you choose to go that route. And if you choose to not go that route, well, then you're going to be stuck doing like what I did, where I've got the double ally protection, and I've built mostly a turtle bit of a team and used Geomancer for most of my damage. If you want to do more direct damage, you're probably going to want to tune the team to make sure that your damage dealer is always protected, everyone else is as protected as possible, and you don't have things like the stuns that can throw off your team or the slows that can throw off your team, and that's why those are important. So I'm going to leave a link down to that below, but hopefully that's been very helpful for you. I really do appreciate you making it through this video. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. If you like these how-to videos, let me know if there's other ones you'd love me to do down below in the comments. If you have any questions about Clan Boss, let me know. Maybe I can make a follow-up video where I answer some of these questions about Clan Boss. Let me know what you're running as a Clan Boss team. Are you just running random champions? Are you managing to actually get your Ultranightmare chest? And if not, push for it. It is the best rewards in the game early on because it's the best way to get shards and books, and that's the best way to progress your account. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. You guys are absolutely amazing. As I said, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Until the next video, I am Bront CatHerder.